Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, but most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And today's episode is the real side of freight, you guys, because we normally do a Financial Friday, but, you guys are going to be all turkey drunk this Friday. So I decided to bring my man Sean on today to break this stuff down and really talk about the ins and outs in, building the financial security inside of your business, having a better understanding for all of this, because real operators out there, it's not just smoke and mirrors. Like, I operate off of an actual P&L here, you guys, and I don't have anything other than me to grow that. And I'm always looking for ways to make more money inside of my business so I can grow and scale and all of that fun stuff. So with that being said, I got my guy, Mr. Sean Smith with Dan and Back on the show today. Sean, thank you so much. And dude, I just fucking love your energy, man. I get amped up when we talk.
Dude, I'm ready to rip.
Sean and I were talking before we went live about like prospecting in different areas of the country and talking to people in different areas of the country. And Sean's in the Northeast. And I got to admit, as much as the accents really get me sometimes, I just appreciate the shortness and the absolute utter disregard for niceties when you're talking to people from the Northeast, except for Sean. Sean's you're the anomaly.
I'm ready to roll all the time. And yeah, I can't say that is or is not because I'm part of the Northeast, and people up here we're ready to rip.
Dude, I am right there with you. And speaking of ready to rip, let's jump into it today, man, because this topic, it's one of my absolute favorite topics. Steve Setka says you are the most frequent guest out here, man, and you are on fire. And Steve, it's one of those things. And for anybody who's watching, I love having Sean come on here. I love doing the Financial Friday segment on this stuff, you guys, because building the financial literacy inside of your business is like polar opposite from personal finances and everything. And you need to have a better understanding about how you can properly invest your resources inside of your business, because sometimes, this is a topic we're going to talk about today. Sometimes it's not necessarily a direct revenue producing activity in the moment of like the traditional sales sense of going in and building this stuff out, man. So like, you guys have invested a lot of time and energy into what we're about to talk about today. So from your guys' stance, man, like what is some of these soft costs is that the right term you think we can use?
Yeah, I mean, you're a CEO. There are plenty of CEOs out there, whether you've got the title or not, president, founder, whatever kind of variety you choose. And as a part of your responsibility, you are a resource allocator. And that comes in the form of time. It comes in the form of money. And when you think about how to tie it back to a profit or a loss, it's how you allocate those resources. And so, us, we're kind of peeling our way through brokers and fleets and trying to figure out ways to help find money, right? And help find money that might be hidden somewhere that you might not realize.
And and to me, it's like when you're talking about finding more money, and it's like how do we allocate that? But most importantly, how do we strengthen a relationship with a carrier? Most importantly, with this, because again, this is the most overlooked aspect of a freight broker, and all the content and all the stuff I see out there does not cover this. I am 100% confident when I say this is the only podcast that will talk about this in depth as an actual business strategy, because a lot of the stuff that you see out there is like, how do we drive down the rates on drivers? Like that's the basis behind it. Very rarely are they talking about how do we increase the profitability of our carrier partners. And for me, it's always going to boil down to working with the exact same trucking companies day in and day out, week in and week out, identifying what lanes they want to run and then getting them on that, right? Like, we move about 100 containers a month out of the Port of Savannah, going up to my customer's transloading facility that's about 150 miles outside of there. Sean, I want you to guess right now, how many trucking companies do you think we use on that?
100 loads a month? I'd say you use 50 trucking companies, Jolly. I guess that's what I would expect most people to use, 50 trucking companies for 100 loads a month.
Yeah, we use 4. We use 4 trucking companies, and out of that 4, one of them probably does about 70% of them.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, and it boils down to, like, again, like we're looking at it as like the size of our, like the company that I'm building. We have to do more with less. All right, we don't have investor capital. We have to work smart. We have to be efficient with our time. And the best way to do that is by using that same trucking company time and time again. So we're not out there constantly sourcing. And then it's the back end that we're saving as well. Because if there's an issue with one of their trucks and they can't come through for us, guess what? We get a 24-hour heads up to recover that. And then we have our secondary carrier, or I call them our oh shit carrier. If our secondary carrier can't come through, our oh shit carrier, they're the most expensive one that's out there, but they always have a truck no matter what.
The thing is, and we ran some of the math on this. On average, on an annual basis, a freight broker is using a carrier 5 times, right? Which is tough to run a business.
Yes.
On an annual basis, using a carrier 5 times. But it is baked into the model, which is like part of the thing that we want to highlight and we want to chat with folks about. And I know you're way out in front on this, but like if you're using a carrier 5 times annually on average, that means if you're running hundreds, thousands maybe of shipments a year, that is time spent on carrier acquisition costs. It's massive, right? It's around, for better brokers, maybe it's 10 or 15% of your time. For brokers who have a lot more kind of one and done relationships, maybe it's 30-40% of your time is spent on carrier acquisition and carrier sourcing, which is a lot of time. As a resource allocator, it is a lot of time, right? Yeah. And so that's what we wanted to zone in on, is that big number.
I think it's lost productivity out there in your business is the biggest killer to your P&L. It really is, right? Because I truly think this, Sean. I don't think enough people can actually comprehend how fragile most businesses are when they're getting up and running, and then like as they're building and scaling their operations out. They are, most small businesses, I don't have the exact stat, but I believe it's in the 90% tile of small businesses are within 30 days of going out of business every single month due to revenue constraints and capital constraints and everything else that come with that. So it's like you need to find more time to work on revenue producing activities, right? Like you really, really do. And that's why I always talk about, as you're like, and I just put out an entire podcast about this last week about the strategies that we implemented to go from 0 customers and 0 revenue to $1 million in total revenue in 22 months. Like we talked about all of this, and I broke all of that down and building out the process behind it. And a big part of why we were able to do that is because we use the same carrier network. It really is, because they are out there working for us. And ironically, they turn into a sales team for you because they're going out there. Hey man, we're going to this place, or we drove by this place, or I know this person at that place.
Oh, I love that.
Dude, it turns into a massive revenue producing activity at that point. But most people, Sean, get caught in the transaction. They get caught at, how can I make $50 more today? So I'm going to go out there to the load board or try and find somebody else or try and push down a little bit more on that price.
Here's a way to think about it. So let's use round numbers. Yeah. I know you're a state school guy, so we've got to use round numbers on the show always. If you're a freight broker and let's say this year you had $100,000 in gross profit, right? Yeah. Gross profit is you charge your customer for a number, you subtract what you're paying the carrier to move that freight, that left over is your gross profit. So for that $100,000, if you spend 30% of your time sourcing carriers, that is effectively, right, a $30K allocation on your gross profit, right?
Yeah.
And so if you doubled the amount of freight you're running with the same carrier, right, and you reduce your cost of acquisition in half, that's more money that you can place your dollar, your time, your hours and minutes into other parts of your business instead, right? So that is a very simple, just like way to think about cost, right? If you're a freight broker who's running a business and who's allocating time, it becomes a lot clearer if you have hard costs with carrier sales reps and you have claims that you may need to be able to deal with. There might be quality issues. There are risks that are concerned. There's capital outlay that you need to have, right? And so all of a sudden, those creep up even more as you increase your usage of one-time carriers.
Yeah, dude, like there's so much, again, you guys, I operate in reality here. Okay. Like I'm not in a social media world of trying to paint a facade about how easy this is. This is extremely challenging to build a sustainable business out there. And you brought up something, Sean, that nobody talks about, and that's claims, right? The time you spend trying to properly, I'll call it, execute upon these claims will drain you if you are not working with somebody that you've worked with before. I've dealt with 2 scenarios here in the last 30 days because, again, I work in reality. You guys, shit happens out there when you're actually moving freight as opposed to just posting about what you think you're doing every single day. We had an issue at one of our facilities where there was some damage to the property done. With the core carrier of ours, guess what? No questions asked, send it over. We'll take care of it. It's done. It's over with. We appreciate our relationship too much. I also had another situation arise where there was a strapping issue on the product and it broke a couple of pieces on there because it got strapped down too tight. This was with a carrier that we hadn't used a lot in the past and we probably won't use again. And they completely disregarded it and said, nope, that's not happening. That's not our fault. Yada, yada, everything under the sun. This is a very big customer of ours that we move a lot of. So we just ate the cost and we moved on in that moment. Right. So again, that was added cost that was put onto our business. Again, I'm always going to do the right thing in that situation. But again, like those are 2 very separate scenarios here that people will find themselves in at some point in time. And not everybody, operates that way, but the blame game starts and then it's that back and forth. It's that ping pong match. And then it's that time that you spend, even if it just takes you a minute or 2 minutes to reply to an email, there's no resolution that happens. And then guess what that ultimately does, you guys? Takes time away from you picking up the phone and cold calling and prospecting and checking in with your current customers.
That's right. And like there's the downside, which is a lot of what we hear a lot about, right? The fraud risks, the claims issues, the write-offs, whatever, which is obviously it could sink a brokerage, right? The old Warren Buffett saying, nobody can do a podcast about this without saying the Warren Buffett quote, which is like, you can tell who's skinny dipping when the tide goes out. Like this is exactly those. The tide goes out when the claims roll in, right? And so either you're wearing pants or you're not. And the other side that I would urge folks to think about is activating your supply side and thinking about it like a marketplace. So everybody loves Uber, Lyft, right? These marketplaces are really, really neat, these consumer marketplaces. And those are very, very smart companies. LinkedIn is a marketplace, right? They're connecting people in a network. They have many levers of monetization that they can use to help people. You are a freight broker working with a carrier or fleet. You have a lot of opportunity to provide additional services beyond helping them fill their schedule. And so if you're working a lot with someone, maybe you have an ability to collectively buy fuel on behalf of your carrier partners and offer a discount that you can get a kick on. Maybe there's a unique working capital relationship that you can strike with a factoring partner, that you can do things like share a quick pay cost or be able to leverage some existing relationships that you may have that you can take a cut on, right? And so same thing goes with things like insurance. Maybe there's a dispatching service that you can offer because you use these carriers for every load that they run, and you have a reliable set of services that you can provide folks. So there's a revenue potential here. Could be a couple $100 a month a carrier, right? That you could think about. There is a cost potential, which is like the cost of great service and reliability and how to think about long-term like loss avoidance, right? That sort of thing. And then there's the hard human time cost on being able to continue to need to source carriers every single time you get a new piece of freight that you need to move. So like the value is enormous. And like, you're a good dude, Jolly. There's a lot of good dudes out there that are trying to do right by the market. And like, if that's what motivates you, that's awesome. But like, you also make a lot of money on this too, right? If you take this angle and you make like a business strategy decision on how to make more money.
Yeah, I think that, from my perspective, it is, it's always going to boil because time is the only resource that we will never get more of. I'm not trying to sound like a fucking morbid poster or anything like that, but it's the truth. And, again, back to inside of your business and your operations, everybody's looking to do more with less, right? I don't know why everybody just looks to how about I just buy a new piece of software as opposed to how do I improve my internal operations to free up my people's time to do more, right? So they're not bogged down with all of these menial tasks. And to me, this is just like the greatest oversight that's out there. And this is something that I am going, again, you guys, I practice what I preach. As my business grows and scales, I will continue to say, hey guys, see, this is how we've done it. That's one thing that we are always going to be heavily invested in because again, case in point, Sean, I'm still waiting for that broker. I've been saying this for 4 years now, still waiting for that broker that's going to come to me with a business plan that shows how you make money as a freight broker without carriers. I'm still waiting for it to happen. Don't know if it's ever going to come about. But again, while you're out there and you're finding these guys that are running these lanes consistently, why go out there to try and save $50? Why do that? I don't get it.
No, you're right. And, do it because you're a good person. Do it because you're going to make more money. But like, you need to be able to make an investment in like relationship management as a function of your kind of carrier network. And like this network, you can utilize it in a number of different ways, right? Like it's much easier to be able to have a honest, trustworthy conversation with your customer if you know that you have got a rock solid set of partners behind you that can help deliver the service on your behalf and do an awesome job, right?
I'm sorry.
No, I guess the last thing I would say, there is a part of carrier sales that I think has a sort of connotation to it. Like I would urge people to think about this like relationship management. And like we started this at Denim just a few months ago is where we turned our account managers into client relationship managers because we really felt like that was the sort of emphasis we wanted to put on the function. And that's where we wanted people to spend most of their time when they talk to their clients every day.
Yeah, no. And that's exactly what, like, it baffles me the amount of brokers out there that use a carrier one time and they always sit there and say, damn, those guys did really good. But then their first action on the next opportunity is just to go out to a load board,
Shoot out
there. And again, like I love load boards, right? I think load boards are a phenomenal tool, but they're a short-term solution for a long-term thing. Like, and here's another thing too, building up your book of business, onboarding a new customer, it takes a very long time to do that, right? And real operators will get what I say here. Why do you, like, who would you rather put on that first shipment with that customer that you just spent 2 years prospecting to finally get that first order than to put it on a trusted carrier that their track record, all of that? Why wouldn't you go with that as opposed to an unproven carrier out there on a load board where the risk is just not worth the reward, right? Because again, back down to the time capital that it took. All of the countless hours of prospecting. Maybe you flew out there, you saw them, you invested a lot in there, and you're gonna risk it with somebody because you can save $50. Like that's the mentality that goes through. I just don't get that. I do not understand that methodology that's behind it because you're risking way more. You look at it as, oh, it's $50, but it's actually $5,000. Maybe it was $5,000 that you invested to acquire that customer ultimately.
And think about it this way. We talk about this stuff in when it comes to risk management all the time. But like if you're making a $50 gain, and let's be super generous, and let's say that you did it 100 times, like you saved $50, right?
Yeah.
So you save $5,000. Great, that's awesome. And then when you lose or you have an issue or whatever on a $40,000 shipment or something, you're in really tough shape. And all of a sudden, that $5,000 is not going to cut it. And you much rather have just avoided the $40,000 loss to begin with than tried to save $50 at every turn along the way.
So what was the reason behind, like, what happened internally at Denim where you guys were like, hey, we got to really look into this a little bit more? Because operational efficiencies is something that again, I feel like that's what everybody should be doing a stress test on, that everybody should be looking at this. So like, what was it that you guys, was it like from feedback from your guys' clients? What was the point behind a lot of this, and what was the real driver behind this?
Hey, I have to make a big shout out to our client advisory board. So Denim has an annual group of freight brokers on our CAB, our client advisory board. Two of them in particular are really on the cutting edge on this. Jeremy from Peregrine Delivery Solutions, they're down in Texas. They do an awesome job with flatbed freight and construction material. And then the folks in River City out in Iowa, they run a ton of freight all over the country. Chris, he does an awesome job. Like those two in particular, they sit on our CAB. They do an awesome job running their brokerages, and they are leaning really hard into like building these great relationships and building these very, very valuable networks. And they kind of brought it up in a discussion with us because I know we're going to talk about this soon, but like we get a lot of inbound at Denim for carriers and fleets who want to come and factor with us. And it's never really been our bread and butter, but it's something that we are increasingly putting a point of emphasis on. And it would be weird to run a factoring company for freight brokers and not look at our freight brokers, carrier partners as opportunities to work together, right? And so we had this conversation in our CAB, our client advisory board, and we were like, hey, we're starting to think about this thing. We get a lot of inbound. It seems really interesting. How do you all think about this? And boy, did we get taken to school. At least I got taken to school by those guys, because they had a lot to say and they were really passionate about building these networks. And there turned out to be a lot of opportunity for us to be helpful. And it's going to be a lot of work for Denim to be able to, change our brand picture. We're like, we were for startup brokers. We're now spending a lot of time in that kind of chunky middle of the market freight brokers. And then to also kind of add fleets on to our kind of target market, it's going to be a lot of work to kind of create the brand perception and get the word out there. But huge opportunity for our clients to help build better relationships for their carrier partners, right? If we're all of a sudden just kind of taking money from one pocket to another and helping people get paid faster.
Yeah. And I look at it like this too. Having the access to those carriers as well, as a broker, I could easily go to you, or, maybe not Sean in particular, but I could go to my, Denim and be like, hey, like, do you guys have anybody out there who's running these lanes inside of your network? And again, it's that back to fraud, back to theft. Contrary to marketing out there right now, theft is on the rise, fraud is on the rise. So therefore, a lot of these bells and whistle platforms that you could sign up for might not be doing as much change. Not saying they aren't doing good, but aren't necessarily curbing it at the level that a lot of businesses need. And knowing that you guys, from a factoring perspective, really vet who is on, who you guys work with. And that's on the brokerage side as well. So we can bring that sense of ease from a carrier that, hey, this broker is legit because they are also factored through Denim. And then same thing from a broker's perspective with the carrier. Hey, this carrier is legit. They're factored through Denim as well. That brings a whole underbelly of capacity out there that you can really tap into.
Yeah. And like, I think we're learning, right? And so I'd love to hear from fleet owners out there and carriers what makes a great factor for you, because that's like an area that we're like starting to explore a lot and spend a lot of time in. But we're getting a lot of coaching from our clients on how we can create a great experience, who we need to work with. Is it a dispatching service? Are there carrier TMSs we need to work with? Are there particular types of ways carriers like to see rates or don't like to see rates? Are there ways that they want to get paid faster or slower? And how can we give them all the optionality that they need? Do they email us an invoice and we just do some cool tech stuff and turn it into something that we can purchase and buy? Like, there's a lot of opportunity out there for us. And we're getting a lot of really great advice on how to think about this space and how to do something different that other folks aren't doing.
I truly feel like the brokers that are going to flourish in this next iteration of the market are going to be the ones that have actually practiced this strategy, Sean, for the last 4 years. I truly feel that way. I think that there is going to be a lot of pain points that are going to be coming about in this next freight cycle for brokers when capacity tightens up. All right, because it's inevitable. It's
Yeah.
going to happen. And if you've been recycling these carriers, and you can go on any social media platform right now and see the screenshots from the emails, and you can hear the stories about what's going on out
It's
there.
not good. Whenever you're getting screenshotted, it's not good.
Yeah, man. And here's the thing. There's going to be a reckoning of sorts, we'll call it, of a wake-up call for people who realize, damn, maybe I'm not as cool as I thought I was these last couple of years, and I can't actually cover freight anymore because I can't just post it and then bully a bunch of carriers to taking it for less and less and less and less and less. And that's going to happen, man. So the strategies that we're talking about on this show is what's going to keep you in business and flourishing this next iteration of this freight cycle, because most people who are out there who are posting content in this industry have not been in a non-broker favorable market. They haven't. It's very, very obvious. And that's why I know I'm going to grow because of this, because I actually practice what I preach. I don't just sit up here, talk all of this, and then do the opposite that's out there. So I hope a lot of people take this into consideration, man, as a viable strategy. And then, again, best case scenario, you make more money in your business, you build more carrier alliances out there, and then your customers ultimately are way more satisfied with you. Again, real freight broker here, you guys, real customer feedback. We got awarded more freight because ding, 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 ding. We love how cool your drivers are to work with when they show up here. We want to give you more business, i.e. we get that feedback. We tell our carriers, and then we also tell our carriers, you guys are getting more business because of this, because if you make us look good, we're going to make you look good. And it's that cycle. It's that cycle of reliability that comes along with it. And that's how we've been able to grow and scale.
This is the ultimate business, is the three-way winning business. Make your customers happy, make your partners happy, and you make yourself happy. If you can find a business that does all three things, you got something. So stick with it. Go long.
It's that sense of ease that comes along with it too, of knowing that, like, hey, when I tender this load to this carrier, I know what I'm going to get out there. And I also know if something happens, I'm going to be notified. I'm going to be able to work through it, and we're going to figure it out. Like that's where the real value is going to come through, because ultimately you're never going to separate yourself as a broker when things are going right. As crazy as it sounds, the real separator is going to come as when things fall apart and how you handle that situation and come up with a solution. That's where that growth is going to come from. And that's where all the growth everybody looks for is, man.
And if you've made it this far, right, over the last few years of kind of the freight markets that we've been in, congratulations.
Yeah.
Hats off to you. Great work, right? It doesn't get easier, though, because there's a different part of your job that gets a little bit more challenging when the tide turns, right? And things are moving in a different direction. And if you sell it out, then you're going to be in a really tough spot. So, like, be thoughtful about that. It's never too late to get started. And, like, run the math on your own carrier acquisition. How many new carriers did you use? How much money did you make? What percentage of time did that cost? And then how can you do twice as many with those folks the next time?
Dude, that's exactly it. Less with
Happy
more.
Thanksgiving out there to the Orange Shirt Gang.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Sean. Thanks for jumping on here, man. And we're going to be doing a solo show tomorrow, you guys. I'm going to be talking more in depth about the realities of being an agent out there in the freight world, because that's the next new best thing that's out there. Is Joel, be an agent,
Hot right now.
It's very hot. And I'm going to break down the realities of what my day looks like as an agent and what you need to expect as you're going to go out there and leave your salary for all these riches and visions of grandeur, which some people are out there posting, which is ironic considering they have a salary while they're posting about leaving said salary. But anyways, that's going to be it for today.
Invite us to your private island, Jolly. We'll be there.
Oh, yeah, dude, you guys front row seats, man. You're coming with. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. As always, I know you guys got value, but if you did and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys, and share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.